This was somebody who really, no God.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 564 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Terry Mixon. Joining me, Paul E. Cooley, my better half. How you doing, bro?
If I'm your better half, boy, are you in trouble. You are like 3/4, maybe.
Come on now. That's not the way to think. You need to be positive.
Now, if you wanted to include the bad half of me, then maybe it's a whole something. Anyway, screw the fractions.
It's been 2 weeks since we talked, man.
What
have you been up to?
The poor listeners, they had to deal with a little shitty intro from me going, sorry, we're sick, man. No intro today.
Dave's not here,
Dave's
man.
not here, man. So I tried to speak through, mouthful of cotton balls. Yeah, it's been 2 weeks. So what's been going on? I finished Trident.
Yay! I don't believe it.
Yeah, I know. I finished the first draft, and I'm more than halfway through the second, and I've got to go back and fix a few things, and probably add maybe a few thousand words. We'll have to see and get to that point. But
is there going to be a third pass through? Or is it 2-year limit?
Oh, there will be a third, but it will not be by me, if you know what I mean. I'll be handing it off to a beta reader at that point. But since it's not going to be published, I think that's about as far as I'm going to go. But because it's not going to be published, they have to record it. So even though it's done, and whenever I get it done, there's still going to be lag because I have to record the damn thing.
If only there was an AI that knew how you talked.
If only. If only. And speaking of that, I got back to work on Signal Decay and having fun, and had some more evil, insane ideas for it. So I still think it's going to be about 75,000 words if I don't add the other point of view. If I add the other point of view, it's easily on top of 100.
Don't add that other point of view.
But it would be so much fun. No, I probably won't. There are compelling reasons for that, because I can ramp up the suspense if no one ever sees where the last half of the book is going to take place until we get there.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly be down there? So yeah, as you can tell from my grin, I'm really enjoying the story, and I'm hoping I can get most of it done, or all of it done, by February, and a lot faster if I can. So between trying to make a couple hours every day for it in the morning before I get to work.
There you go.
All
that
the other
works.
crazy shit. So that's where I'm at. What about you?
Well, let's see. I went to a convention, 20 Books Vegas, came back. I somehow miraculously dodged getting the con crud, so I'm happy about that.
I got your con crud. I wasn't even at the con, and I got your con crud.
It sucks to be you.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what that's what happens to the better half.
Okay, so what else has been going on?
On the other side of the coin, I was supposed to do some editing for the novella I wrote, one that's titled End of Empire, and I didn't get shit done while I was gone. This should not surprise me that I did nothing but do con stuff while I was gone. I should have known better. Next time I will know better.
There's no way I could get editing done at the con. There's no way.
It just did not happen.
I can get writing done, but I cannot get editing done.
I need to go ahead. I'm about halfway through the second reading. I need to finish that second reading and then do a third one and send it off to the editor. That should probably take me 3 or 4 days, so I just need to focus on doing it. The problem is about 5 days ago, I started writing on the next Empire novel, and I've already wrote 17,000 words in it. And it's really flying along, and I'm happy with where things are going with it. And who wants to stop writing so they can go edit?
Terry doesn't want to be an adult. Terry doesn't want to do the hard stuff. Terry wants to play.
I don't wanna.
Because it's boring and tedious, and I already know the story. Wah.
He knows me so well.
Wah.
Actually, for me, the revision process is where I add the details that I like that make the story stand out.
Right, yeah.
So I'm happy with the process. It's just that unlike everything else, this novella is intended as a reader magnet, so it's not one that has the driving pressure of publication behind it. And that's causing me grief because I want to do the other stuff. So I just need to force myself to finish this and get it out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can come back and finish writing this novel. I'm targeting 90,000 words, which probably means it'll be 95, because that's how it rolls.
Yeah, because you've been going long lately.
At this rate, I'll hit 100,000 before too much longer.
Oh my God.
Then I'll be in Paul E. Cooley territory.
When I get a book that's over 135,000 words, when I eclipse my current record, then we're probably going to have to end the intervention.
Don't worry, we'll call Brandon Sanderson to come on the show and talk to you about it.
Whatever, man. I think epic fantasy authors in general need an intervention, but that's just me.
Yeah, there's something about their genre that they just want to write long.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not cutting anybody down who writes it. I'm not cutting down anybody who reads it. It's just not my bag, but holy fucking shit.
The last time we had a fantasy author on, he gave us some crap about saying that.
Yeah,
shit.
he did.
And probably rightly so.
That's rightly so. It is rightly so. It's just when I think of epic fantasy, I think of doorstops. It's just immediately what comes to mind.
It's easy to go doorstoppish with something where you're having to invent the entire world out of whole cloth.
Oh, sure, but I mean the '80s were especially bad because you had all the Terry Brooks trade paperback, or not trade paperbacks, mass market paperbacks that were so thick they could be used to kill bears. And in fact, I'm sure at the Alaska Library, it was used that way. Pretty sure of it. Anyway.
There was that L. Ron Hubbard one. Did you ever see the mass market paperback of that sucker?
I had it. Battlefield Earth is the one you're talking about. Yeah.
It was over 1,000 pages in mass market paperback. That sucker was this thick. It was monstrous.
That too could have been used to kill elephants. So, yeah. I don't understand, but whatever. I keep having to remind myself that when you take all of the Derelict Saga and put it in one book, it's going to be that big.
Good luck finding a printer.
I ain't printing shit.
All right, man. We'd all like do-overs in our lives. And we were talking about me editing stuff. Part of what I do is I revise my revisions. I write something, then I go back and I clean it up because I dictate. I dictate and Dragon Naturally Speaking. So I have to have a pass to clean up the inevitable errors that introduces into the process. And then I start adding content and smoothing things out and fixing larger issues. That's why I have to have 3 passes. One to fix the dictation issues, which that's probably the longest one. Then the next one goes through is pretty quick, expanding parts that I want to smooth out, fixing continuity issues, that kind of nonsense. And then the final one is just tweaks here and there as I read through it before it goes off to the self-editor. But I want to talk to you about that and more as we revise the past.
We're going to revise our revisions.
That's true.
All right, let's see how we handle this. Man, I got 2,000 words today.
Power to the people.
Oh, it felt good. It felt good.
I haven't gotten words for a couple of days, just the minimum.
I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, I have 60,000 words to show for this year. I mean, it's more than that, actually. It's not just 60.
That's low.
It's very low. But it's more like 110, 120 between various projects and the novelettes and long short stories I wrote for anthologies, not to mention a couple of shorts. So, but still, it's shit. It's absolute shite.
Let me look at my spreadsheet to tell me.
Fuck you.
For
I don't even
sure.
want to hear it.
Well, it's not a tremendously great amount of numbers for this, or for last month rather. Last month, right at just short of 30,000 words written and 216,000 edited. 2 passes through the novel.
Yeah. See, this year you have blown me completely out of the water, and it's embarrassing.
30,000 is embarrassing. I'm like, dude.
Get fucked.
At least I'm done with that novella.
This is true. I'd have to go back and look. I think I probably have 17,000 words of fragments for static. For 3 different versions of static. I think I have another 20,000 words of Trident that I dumped, not to mention the 2 false starts. And then I worked on various things that aren't completed for antisocial person or quantum personality disorder and other shit. So I've written a lot of words, just haven't gotten done. No, I didn't say 30.
30,000. How many did
30.
you say?
I said
how many did you have to abandon?
How much? What now?
You said, I thought you said 30,000 words you had that were down a foxhole, a rabbit hole somewhere.
Yeah, at least.
That's awful.
It is bad. It is very bad. It's like Paul's mission in life now is to finish a fucking book. So
imagine me as Richard Simmons. You can do it.
Well, I was working on Trident today because it's like, all right, I just need to figure out what the fuck, because I've written like all these fragments all over the place. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to use any of those yet. I can't tell if I was talking to myself or preparing humanity for what's coming. Anyway,
that's one of the differences about the way you write and I write is I don't write a lot of fragments because I don't jump around. I'm always going from scene to scene. So the most I'll ever do is I'll say, I've went down a rabbit hole over here. I need to chop a scene or a chapter and back up to where I went the wrong direction and then go on.
I'm constructing a puzzle. And sometimes...
actually, what you're doing is you're taking a jigsaw and cutting out random pieces of wood and seeing if you can beat them into some kind of shape.
That is not quite true. There are elements of truth in that. But seriously, it is... I do have these pieces, and yes, I do have to add the little adornments and do some carving in order to get them to work at times. But sometimes I'm missing a piece. And sometimes that missing piece means I have to go figure out what that piece is. And sometimes that piece is rather large. So,
I ran into that.
I don't have this problem with first books. I have this fucking problem 4 and 5 books down the road when it's a contiguous goddamn arc. So there, Bubba.
I ran into that problem at the end of the novella. I reached where I was writing into the final scene and I go, there's something missing. I'm missing something here because the pacing feels a little weird. So I went back before that and added a scene.
And did that fix it?
It did.
I'm finding a lot of things that I may have to go back and put in between, but instead of worrying about that, I'm just going to go forward. I realized today while I was working on this that I have probably 20,000 more words in Trident, and it's all action and creepiness from here on out till we get to the end.
Everyone dies, except those that wish they were dead.
And then we will do the typical Paul E. Cooley cliffhanger and son of a bitch remove and
that mother.
Pretty close.
That's what your readers do.
Oh yeah.
Oh, what?
When the patrons get to end a Daryl of Trident, they're going to be like, "You son of a bitch! Why did you do this?" Because it's
gluttons for punishment. They should know you by now.
Pretty much. I actually think they'll like this ending, so we'll see. But that means I know exactly what needs to happen in shipyards. So I just need to get to that when I'm done. But God damn it, I need something else to do.
It's time for comedy.
I don't do comedy. The
I
closest
know that's pretty much why I said that.
the closest to comedy I've come is the street, and let's face it, that's just
That's social commentary.
that's
not
different.
Comedy.
That's a completely different kind of horror. But yeah, it's social commentary too. But it was funny. It was bad. It was horrible. I'm ashamed I wrote such a thing.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not. I've had people ask, where is this mythological thing I've heard of called the street?
Got a copy somewhere on one of my shelves here.
I'll never tell. I'll never tell. I'll never tell. So yeah, what do you think? 20,000 words of pure freaking action, followed by some other crazy things? Interspersed?
In what? In your
In Trident,
the street?
Yeah. In
Oh,
Trident.
Trident. I was
Good
thinking
God,
I haven't read
man.
Trident, so I
Keep
don't know.
up.
I don't know what you've got coming in there. How would I?
Just nod your shaggy Zeus beard and
Go for it. That's what I think you should do. Go for it.
Patrons, this is the most useless advice I've ever gotten from this man. And that's
Once more
compete-
with feeling.
that's got a lot of competition, actually. Do we have a topic?
We do revision.
Revision.
It's something that should be, very very familiar to you based on this conversation we're having now.
Is this where I channel my inner Fiddler on the Roof? Revision! Revision!
I think you should. Right there, that's the lead for this episode.
Nobody wants to hear me sing for the opening of the episode. Nobody. Nobody's sane anyway. People just be wrong or something or whatever.
So, Paul, the reason I want to talk about this subject is because I'm in the process of revising the novella that I just wrote, and I realized that a lot of experienced writers have given advice, and I fell into a trap. I fell into the trap of listening to someone say, if you want to be a successful writer, you should do it this way because other successful writers do it this way. I forgot that everybody is an individual and their path is different.
Do I really want to ask who gave you this terrible advice?
Dean Wesley Smith.
You son of a bitch. Okay.
He has a lot of great advice, but sometimes I forget that he keeps saying, not every piece of advice is for you.
Which is something we say on this show all the time. So why don't you explain to us what you did to wreck your process? Where did the bad advice touch you, Terry?
Let me give you the bad advice first. Well, I'm going to step back from that. It's not bad advice. It's just advice that may not fit the way I write.
Okay, fair enough.
And it's probably excellent advice for a lot of people. He says that the way he writes is he'll write one draft from beginning to end and do what he calls cycling and go back and touch what he's just written 400 or 500 words. So he keeps cycling this until he gets to the end of the story, and then he's done. And he says that all writers that are professional writers that put out lots of words, they do some variant of this. Because if you keep going back and editing things, then it just becomes a time sink and you can't be productive. You can't write really fast and put out a lot of words. And he says that, and I bought into it, not realizing that, or not remembering how that just doesn't work with me, how that's not how I write. Because I don't write it that clean when I start. If I wrote everything that I needed to put into a story the first time through, maybe that would work. But I went back to scene one, and basically it looked like a slasher movie by the time I was finished with it. My red pen and I went through there fixing things, because at the start of any story, the first couple of chapters are very rough, very, very rough. And I added things, and I added some themes to it that I said, oh, I could stick these themes in here and bring these things forward because they'll fit with the ending of the story, which I had no idea what the ending of the story was going to be when I started writing. So that's why his advice is not for me. He writes into the dark like I do, but he's got 35 years of experience at seeding all this stuff through there. I don't yet. Maybe his advice will be right for me someday. It's not right for me today.
Okay, so what was the trap?
The trap was me saying, oh, I've got to be faster. I've got to do this all in one thing, because if I can't, keep punching out these words, I'm not going to hit the lofty goals that I've set for myself. Those lofty goals were an illusion. They were a trap in and of themselves, because I should be happy if I can make 5 or 6 books a year. I was aiming for 8. Maybe that's a bit much. Is if I can focus on the process that makes me happy as I'm writing, that I think produces the best stories, and streamline it rather than trying to fit what is working for me creatively to somebody else. And I've been going back for the last 4 or 5 novels or more, trying to fit Dean Wesley Smith's advice into what I'm doing and failing. And I finally decided with this novella, I said, I'm going about it all wrong. I need to focus on actually having revisions, because that's not my mountain. The way he's producing is not the way I produce. It doesn't make me happy. It makes me feel anxious. It makes me create things that I think are not as good. And I should focus on creating stories that make me feel good.
Hallelujah.
So that means writing out that rough draft, printing it all out, going through there with a red pen, making all changes up there and adding things, putting those changes in, and then going back and reading it one more time and polishing out what I've just added in and sending it off to a copy editor. That makes me happy, and it makes a story with enough detail and enough sensory information that it makes me feel like it's a good story.
Do you ever skip over something? You're like, I could add some detail here, but I'm in such a hurry to get to these other thoughts that I'm just going to let that go and just keep moving on? You don't
I
ever
never
do
do that.
Wow.
I may go ahead and, God, I want to get through this scene. But if I'm sitting here going, God, I want to get through this scene, I should be stepping back going, what's wrong with this scene? Does it really belong here? No, seriously. If I am bored with a scene, I should be going, why is this scene boring me? Because something's wrong.
Well, that's a little bit different than saying, I want to get through this scene as quickly as possible because I have 14 other things that I want to write about right now that take place after this scene.
Well, how many things do you know that's going to take place after what you're writing? You write in fragments, bits and pieces here and there. When I'm writing, I know what's probably going to happen in the next scene. Maybe what's going to happen in the scene after that. That's as far as I look ahead. I may have a goalpost somewhere in the distance that occasionally I see over the top of the trees and through the fog, but more often than not, I'll make a turn and I'll never see that goalpost by the time I get to the end. I've got to go to some other goalpost.
I found my goalposts for this story about a month ago. I finally found the goalpost.
What do you call it? They call these stories slice of life, where you're going through life. You've never heard that phrase before?
Yeah.
There's a type of story where you write where it's just a slice of somebody's life.
It's usually literary.
In a way, the way I'm writing is very much like that. I'm taking the methodical steps that develop the characters and plot events and story universe as I'm progressing through the story. I'm focused on the here and now in the story, and I'm not really focused on what's coming up. I want to make what I'm writing now the most enjoyable, most illuminating part of what I'm writing. I get excited about the now in the story.
Not nice for you.
Hey, if one can adjust their process to work with what makes them happy, then they're in a terrific place.
Yes, I agree. There are times where I will skip over detail. And I will say that because what? What are you laughing about?
I just go on. Something occurred to me. Go on. It's nothing to do with you.
Okay. I'll skip over some detail about what maybe something looks like, or some other piece of information that might kind of make it seem like they're in less of a static setting. But sometimes I will leave out the details for that point, because I just don't want to deal with them at that moment. So
You are not alone.
I will either leave myself. That's what I was talking about. I'll either leave myself a comment, or I know I'll catch it on when I start revising. I'll realize that it's too much. It's too ant farmish in here. I have to do something about it.
What you were saying reminded me of something that happened to John Ringo.
For John,
his
Ringo.
publisher, Baen Books, published a version of the story. They didn't go with the most recent one. They accidentally published a previous iteration of the story where he'd done exactly that. So there was a major scene missing, and it said, "Insert big explosions here."
Right. Yeah.
So
Those
I'm a
kinds
little
of
worried about
notes.
leaving those. I'm a little worried about leaving those kind of markers anywhere.
You leave them in code all the time, and you wonder what poor bastard is going to come around this and look at it and go, "What does this mean? What does any of this mean?" Just
when I make a note
notes.
in the story about anything, usually it's something very small. I'll say something along the lines of, "What did I name this character to begin with? Look up this detail from one of the previous books."
Yeah.
Because I don't want to stop writing as I go along, but I insert the comment and put 3 slashes before it and 3 slashes after it, so I can search for 3 slashes, and I know that's all I ever use for making commentary to look for.
How Unix of you.
Isn't that two slashes? That's the old Unix thing, but maybe it is 3. It's been a long time. I picked it up from somewhere.
It depends if we're talking escapes or whatever, but that's a completely
I'm talking forward slashes here.
You.
I'm not sure where I picked that up, but it works. I probably picked it up from commentary inside some Linux something or another, some scripts on a Linux machine.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, / the way to go. Anyway, that notwithstanding, you and your bozosity. I use Scrivener for that a lot. I have comments and notes everywhere through the document. It's just kind of how I have to do things.
Well, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not looking down on anybody that does that. It's just not for me.
Yeah. The one time I tried to use notations, I skipped a few or forgot to take out a few, and the editor was very angry with me because I had put those in there. I got the snide comment, "Use the comments to do this." It's like, oh, okay. Never mind then. I will try and behave and do it the right way. But, whatever.
That's where you go, "You work for me."
No, I completely understood it, though, because you have one printing error and suddenly you're sending out to somebody else with comments in there and everybody having missed it. And then you start getting the emails and the tweets and the Facebooks. 1,000 people can tell you fucked up.
Oh, that'll happen with anything.
Oh, yeah, of course. But this is such a monumentally easy thing to overlook. It's just don't do it. Just do not do it.
So for me, when I finish writing a story, I'll have pushed through, and I can write fairly rapidly that first draft if I'm not focusing on all the things that I have to do in that first draft. I can write 2,000 or 3,000 words a day without too much trouble, as long as I don't have to take Donna to doctor's appointments or other things that are going to disrupt my day.
Right.
When I'm done with it, I go back, like I said, and I print it out, and that's where I start expanding it and saying, okay, I can stick a new character here, this nameless character. Oh, I can make that this person and give them a personality and make it relevant to the story that's going forward, because it's a cardboard cutout the way I wrote it the first time. I need to expand that out so that's a person. I need to expand how this scene is described, how this object is described, how all these things are. I need to insert sensory detail that I may have skipped the first time through. So, for example, going through the red lines for chapter 1 of this, it was 2,500 words. It took me almost 2 hours to go through there and bleed all over it because I wanted to change so much. Even before I even before I started making the red lines, I said, I'm not happy with where this started. So I backed up and I added an entire page of additional description to set the scene before I even got to where I'd originally started.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think everybody does that. Whether they want to admit it or not is a completely different question.
After the first couple of chapters, things will smooth out because by then the characters have more developed in my mind as I'm writing it the first time. So I've added some of the details going forward. I may have to change them a little bit to make everything work with the new setup that I've begun in the edit. And then when I finish that, going through that time, one more read will let me hopefully polish out the majority of the things that I've gotten wrong. That's basically word choices. When I get to the third one, it's word choices.
Well, I've gone through the draft of Trident Part 1 already. So I think next thing is for me to start reading it aloud.
It's interesting how the revision process changes as you get more experience as a writer. I know that my early revision processes, the first couple of books, were actually surprisingly very similar to what I'm going back to. But I was not as skilled a writer, and I was more focused on things like sentence structure rather than voice. Now I'm all about voice rather than, oh, I think I need a noun here. Oh, I've got to cut out those adverbs.
I cut out those adverbs by not using them.
I use adverbs whenever I feel like it's appropriate. And anybody that doesn't like it, well, too bad.
It's a game, man. It's a game. How can I say this as how can I put this concisely and still have emotion and effect without using a fucking adverb?
Where I'm sitting now, we've all risen to a level of writing to where we've got different things that we're looking for. Mm-hmm. I'm at the point now of going, oh, the way I normally say these kind of things when I'm writing, that's a little passive. How can I punch that up?
Yeah.
I'm starting to see places like that now. So that's where I am as a writer. That's my current bugaboo.
Your current bugaboo? I'm actually I've kind of regressed a little bit. I know I have, but I'm actually glad I have. There are a couple times where I will purposely use not true passive voice, but passive enough to slow shit down and also break things up. Because if I have too much action in words, if you know what I mean, I want to kind of slow that shit down as much as possible. And sometimes it's almost making the sentences longer. It's maybe adding more detail in there. It's basically just there to kind of ease off the accelerator and kind of calm down a little bit.
With me, it's things like the way he was talking annoyed Kelsey immensely. His words enraged Kelsey.
See?
I've got to figure out those places like that. I can punch that up a little bit. Punch it up.
Guess what's missing in the version that doesn't suck?
Passive voice?
No, what's missing?
What is it?
An adverb.
I just picked that out of the air.
That's
not fair. I was robbed. You just lawyered me into a corner.
I didn't lawyer you at all.
I don't know. I still use adverbs. I'm not afraid of using them because it's part of how people talk.
Sure. Oh, if it's a dialogue, all bets are off.
Oh, hell. The narration is me. It's my author voice. So it's going to have some adverbs.
No wonder it sounds so just bad.
All your taste is in your mouth and not much of that.
Oh, damn. What does that even mean?
I have no idea, but it sounds really good. It sounds mean, you know. I just slammed you hard.
Phrasing. Anyway. Go fuck yourself.
But now that you've brought it up, what I'm going back to for my revision process is frighteningly similar to what I started out with Empire Bones way back in the beginning. So maybe I'm returning to my roots. even printing it out on paper, I didn't realize it, but it actually is reverting to just about the revision process that I had in the beginning. Even though my writing skills have improved, the process has changed back. So maybe that's a good thing.
Trident Part 1 is the first thing I have printed out and actually crawled through in I don't know how many books. Like actually spent all the time with the paper draft, redlining and going through and everything else. It's the first time I have done that in a very long time.
Keep talking for just a second.
Oh no. Terry is now going to present us with a manuscript you could smash the house with. Or maybe not. Either that or he's going for his special box. I don't know which one frightens me more, to be honest. Oh, pieces of paper. Okay, we might be all right. Maybe. What am I looking at?
This is tons and tons of red.
Lots and lots of blood.
Everywhere that you can see, this thing is just filled with red. Makes my skin crawl.
As it's supposed to.
Thankfully, it gets a lot less red as the story goes along.
You know why that color sends such trepidation of fear into us, right?
Because it's blood.
Teachers.
Oh, is it? Is that what it is?
Teachers. I think it is because we've been getting red marks on our papers for I don't know, since I was 5 or 6.
All right, I'll buy that.
Now, kids today, I don't know what they get. I don't know if they get paper report cards or not. They probably get them emails and text messages.
They get participation trophies.
Oh, that's fucking cold.
When I went to, the reason I say that is when I was taking community college courses, I got to take some of those courses with folks that were just out of high school, and holy cow, they were idiots. Our education system failed those poor children.
Oh, don't even get me started on that. That will be a completely different conversation. Probably get me a lot of hate mail. Anyway, what was I trying to say before you fucked everything up? There was a thought here, and you destroyed it.
My work here is done.
Kiss my rear end.
So I've talked about my revision process. Give us a little bit of info about yours.
I have a revision process.
Apparently not.
Apparently not. It's usually spent, I will, once I finish the book, I will go through and read it. And
that's always a good start.
And I'll usually do, I had been doing it on the computer. It's like I do kind of a first draft on the computer, look through. And this time I printed it out afterward and then went to work on it. Mainly because sometimes I get lost in the digital because the files are all stacked on one another. And sometimes I want to basically go exercise a section through the print and kind of just look at it as isolated and figure out that maybe this isn't the right place for this to be. Usually I do that with Scrivener, but for some reason this last time it felt more comfortable doing that with paper, and I don't know why.
I've tried doing revision, like turning change tracking on in Word and making the changes that I want to make, and it doesn't have the same effect as doing it with a pen on paper.
No, and it's probably in the long haul the act of typing in the changes. I think that also gives you a second chance to look at what you've done and see if it, number one, if it's really what you want to do. And number two, that phrase that you put down there to change it to may also suck. And at the last second, you may go, oh, that's what I was trying to say, and then rewrite it and move the fuck on.
Well, yeah, but I think that what the writing, going down with the pen and paper on there, I think it's hitting a different part of my brain. When I look at something in electronic form as opposed to paper form, it's different. And it's got to be the way the words in the story flow into me are different than when I'm looking at them on the computer screen. And it's got to be because it's a different section of the brain in some way.
Well,
it's hitting me different creatively.
Yeah, you're trained. You and I are both, well, me a lot less than you. We were both trained to basically look at paper and read paper and write on paper and slash through paper and do everything on paper. So the digital medium is a little bit of a different animal. I've been writing with carving words in digital since 82, 83, as well as analog through typewriter. But I'm a lot more comfortable with the medium than you are.
I didn't start doing anything with computers as far as seriously until I was past being adult. So the whole digital thing came to me after high school.
Exactly. That's what I mean. So there's a little bit of a difference there. But regardless, find the way you do it. And we say this all the time. If something isn't working, try something new.
If it is working, stop.
If it is working,
do not fuck with it. If it is working.
And yet we violate.
I need to have that advice. I was saying that to me.
We are the biggest violators of our own advice. We're the guys who just say, yeah, I said that and it's true. I'm going to go do exactly the opposite now.
But wait, if I do this other thing, I can improve my word count. Don't believe it. It's not true, Terry.
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Yeah. Okay. Put on your full Akbar accent. This is not going to end well. Yeah. So what am I going to do next time? I don't know. Maybe I'll print things out again. Who knows?
If it works for you, keep doing it.
We'll see if it worked this time. The big thing is the reading it aloud is pretty much the final edit as it should be.
I was having my computer read it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that works to a degree, but it's slow.
Try narrating it.
Yeah, that's slow. And I suck.
I suck too, but for some reason people still listen. What?
When you narrate to yourself, you should give that to your patrons as a reward.
What do you mean?
It's something that no one else will ever hear. You reading something, messing it up and cussing yourself out for screwing something up and all.
I don't want to give them the unexpurgated recordings because they're usually pretty boring, because what happens is I immediately edit after the chapter is done. And that means excising and getting rid of all the parts where I fucked up. If there's something really cool, I'll grab it, I'll make a clip of it, and then move the fuck on. And then at some point I'll include it in something else.
Your first revision process involves a lot more hatchet work than mine.
Probably.
I slice things like a scalpel. You take an axe and cut down the tree and chop parts of it off and throw it into the fireplace.
If I'm doing that, it's usually because I went down the wrong path, and I know I've gone down the wrong path, and that turns out that is not the story I want to tell.
You don't know the story you want to tell when you start?
No, not always.
Neither do I. But I know the characters. I know the themes.
Yeah, but you can fuck things up. Like, for instance, okay, in Evolution, I could have added a takeover of what was going on by another shadowy government agency. It would have been cool. It would have been fucking cool to do this. It would have put everything in total confusion. It would have been awesome. It would probably take another 200,000 words to sort out. Not the fucking book I want to write. I started down that path and went, this is not this.
That would be a hell of a story. You're writing the story about this secret black ops group that is the government scene, people behind the scenes that do all of this stuff. And then they find out there's another group similar to themselves working for the same government that's in competition with them. Like, who are these people? Where are those people? Who the fuck are they?
And that may happen in another book, but that is not what was supposed to happen in Evolution. And that meant cutting off, I excised 30,000 words of Evolution because it was just about the characters that I loved, but it went nowhere.
You don't realize that it's going nowhere before you get to 30,000 words? Well, I'm not saying all in one thing, but that's a lot more words than I would spend on a story before I realize I've gone astray.
It was cutting points of view. It was winnowing down points of view. It was realizing I was not going to write another book with 7 goddamn points of view. It just was not going to happen. And that's why I winnowed it down. I winnowed it down to 2, with just Catfish and Shauna. Well, that changes a lot of things, because now we're not getting points of view from the scientists. We're not getting points of view from the security personnel. I've cut all of that off.
Maybe that's a difference between us, because when I did that the last time where I had to cut a specific point of view, I kept everything. I just changed it to a different person.
No, I needed to kill it. It just needed to die, because it was stuff that was going to happen outside those people's purview. So it just needed to go away. I cut it and went away, gone. There are parts of Destruction that didn't make it. There are parts of Tomb that didn't make it because of those reasons. Because they led it into a place where it just didn't seem like it needed to go, and it wasn't some place I wanted to take it through. So yeah, I'll check portions of words, I'll check chapters. I'll even chuck a character. You ever chucked a character?
Would you chuck Misty?
Definitely.
Oh, Misty.
It's a black cat. They're disposable. Just ask Keko.
Oh!
Oh, if you're watching this on YouTube, you just had a treat. Anyway. Yeah, I throw stuff away if it doesn't work. It goes into the fragment drawer, and sometimes it shows back up. I mean, Signal Decay's got probably 50,000 words on it, and that's just between 3 other drafts, not the one I'm currently working on.
I used to save fragments of things thinking, oh, I can reuse that later. It never happens. I might reuse it in the same project. I'll save things that I cut if I cut something significant during the project. If I didn't use it during the project, it's gone. I never, ever go back to this stuff.
A lot of the fragments that I've been collecting for Trident are going to show up in Destruction. I keep doing that. Shipyards. I just don't know how I'm going to get them in there. But they are going to happen because they have to happen. I may find a different way to deliver them. I may need to rewrite them for them to work. But I want to keep those original fragments because I think those would make some interesting bonus material. And shit, they may even make their way into the book. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows? I don't throw stuff away like that. I keep it around. I'll move it. I'll call it something different. I keep fragments around, and every once in a while I'll go looking through them and say, hey, what was that idea I had? And then go trawl through it and find it and go,
I can't remember what I ate last week, much less any story elements that I didn't use in the last novel.
That's why I named them, so I don't have to remember. There are easy fixes to these problems you seniors have. I don't know what the issue is. Happy birthday, by the way.
Well, thank you. I'm ancient, as you said.
He's fucking old.
55.
Oh my God. I'll be 49.
My warranty is expired.
Oh yeah. Mine went away a long time ago, obviously. My parents never returned the lemon, so now it's just being passed from owner to owner.
They didn't send in your registration card.
Oh man. I think it's because my mom drank Houston water. I think that's what it was. Anyway.
I thought you were going to say bourbon or maybe gin.
No, my parents don't drink. Not really. Not hardly at all.
It's not the reality of the subject. It's what the innuendo is.
I know. I don't want to give that any credence. You cretin.
I've never met your parents, so
no,
my opinion of who they are would mean absolutely nothing.
Well, that shouldn't keep you from espousing it like the rest of freaking humanity.
I just did. I just implied. Well, I didn't imply it. I said right out, your mom drinks gin, and that's why you are the way you are.
Oh yeah, your mama wears combat boots. What does that even mean? Seriously.
Maybe she smells of elderberry.
And your father was a hamster?
My father was a hamster. Who knows? Who knows the truth?
Has your hamster ever been a father? What? Sorry, I had a little dyslexia there, tried to cover it, it didn't work.
How can people know what their revision process are? Obviously, we haven't figured out shit because we've written how many damn books, and our revision process keeps wandering all over the way as we try to select things that work for us. How would we advise other people to say, here's what I'm doing, what might I try that's better, and how do I know if it worked or failed? Oh, this is bad advice for you because you still haven't figured that out. I'm sorry.
My advice to myself is don't fuck it up.
That's like, you're like RuPaul.
It's more along the lines of don't skip steps. You know, you get to the point where you think, like Terry was saying, I've written this many books, I should know how to do everything by now. Certainly I can skip this important step. No, you really can't.
You really can't.
You really can't. I realized with Evolution, I didn't do a good enough job editing it before I let people look at it. I'm fixing that for the next book. I learned all sorts of things about not letting a book sit too long. So changed that as part of my revision process.
If you go back to one of your books and go, who wrote this? What happens next? I don't remember any of this.
It might have been a while. So I'm probably going to keep the paper thing in the process next time. I think I am. But the other thing is record before you let anybody see it, because that's where I do the majority of my editing. And considering this is just going to be out there on Patreon and as an audiobook eventually on my site, it'll be it'll do double duty, so to speak. You just go ahead and record it.
Well, I kind of do almost the opposite of that, which is not surprising because we're like radically different in how we write in a lot of ways. I take the first draft that I write as I'm writing it. It'll get one quick go through, and I'm posting the chapters to Patreon for my patrons. They get my first draft.
Right.
It's not going to be the final draft, but they get it months before anybody else. They're following the story along. It wouldn't work for you because God only knows. I know that my chapters, they're going to continue to be a cohesive story going forward. Yours, it's not linear. It wouldn't work for you that way.
It's linear now.
Well, when you're done, it's linear, but when you're writing it, it's not.
No, I'm 70%, 80% through the book. It's linear now.
Until you decide you need to write something else.
No, I think I'm good. I think I'm good, actually. We'll find out. We'll find out while I'm recording it and when I go, God damn it.
I think one of the things we need to remember is we can't let our eyes get bigger than what we can do. We crave to be able to produce more, to write more, to do things more. And striving is an excellent thing. A man's reach should always exceed his grasp, but not by a huge margin. That's where failure comes in. Don't set unrealistic expectations for yourself or think that changing something in the way you're doing it is going to give you this quantum level improvement on anything, because writing is an iterative sort of thing. You're not going to find anything, I think, that you're going to do different that changes what you're doing so much that it immediately raises you to an incredible new level. And dreaming of that is like dreaming of perfection. It's a trap.
All right. You've heard
That's my personal opinion. It may sound a little downer, but take small steps. Don't say, let's use an example. When I switched to Dragon Naturally Speaking to dictate as opposed to writing with the keyboard, I am a slow typist. I type about 30 words a minute, on a good day. And I can do almost double that even with my halting way I narrate. Because as my wife says, I am really fond of pregnant pauses while I try to think of what I'm going to say next.
Yes.
And so that is something that's a challenge for me. And I kept thinking, oh, I could switch to Dragon and it's going to be great. And I'm going to like quadruple my word count. And suddenly 12 novels a year is within grasp. No, it is not within my grasp. But if I can add a couple of novels a year, that is a real quantitative change that is not going to be outside my grasp.
Yeah.
It's going to take a struggle to get to it, but it's not something that's an order of magnitude more than I'm doing now. As a professional writer, you'll find that year over year, the changes when you start improving things will get better every year. And if you look back 4 or 5 years, you'll go, wow, I have improved so much in whatever I'm looking at. But not year to year. The changes as you're building up to it, it's like muscle memory. You've got to make that work happen, and you've got to keep doing it in order to get there. It's not going to be, I'll change X, and suddenly it's a new world. If somebody tells you that it is, put a little salt on that. Put a little salt on that.
Don't you believe it?
Well, it may be true. Maybe somebody will give you a piece of advice that makes a huge difference in what you're doing. But never lose sight of where you are and what you've accomplished and what you've already gained. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and change everything and lose the things that you're doing that are right. Because we still don't know what our best process is, as it's obvious by the way we're talking about keep changing them. Just remember that what you're doing this time, you'll be inclined to change it for the next one. Give it some thought. Think about, is that the right thing to do? Do I want to change one variable and see how that works out? Or do I want to make this rabid change and change a whole bunch of things and not know really what made a difference? That's another risk that we run into when we change lots of things. Which variable made the difference?
Yeah, you almost need a retrospective at the end of the process when you publish the book. Write down lessons learned, things you don't want to ever have to do again, and maybe you should keep that as a checklist for the next time you publish or send it out. Here
when you finish a book, reflect on it. Reflect on the process that you did. What could I do to change and improve? What could I do that'll take what I did and make it better? What didn't work for me? Those are the kind of things you need to look at, and you look at it every single book that you're doing it. But don't do it in the middle of don't do it in the middle of your process. Don't be Terry. Do not do that in the middle of a book.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. That is a bad idea. Well, are you capable of taking us out of here?
We'll see. It's been so long. I'll probably forget everything.
Should I
I'm gonna give it a shot.
Oh God. All right,
folks. If you want to send us notes about your revision process or what you think we should do in our revision process, so we can look at it with a skeptical eye and probably say no, send us a note at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find Paul on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley. You can find all of our audio on podhoster.com if you know how to get there from here. How do they get to our audio? It's linked to our website, but I'm doing this on purpose because I knew that you would sit there and make this face. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/DRS podcast. You can find us on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group, where all the cool kids hang out. And you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you too can support this podcast and help us do better. Help Paul with what pieces of equipment and labor he needs to make these episodes happen for you and get exclusive content, such as for the $10 listeners who get their names read every show.
Wow, you're doing amazingly well after that complete total fuck up.
And I kind of inserted that fuck up to watch your face explode.
Yeah, Did you see my face turn completely red, you bastard?
I did.
And our $10 patrons are Andrew Smallwood, J.D. Barker, Aaron Meeser, Veronica Jaguar, currently recording Pain Before the Storm for Jeff Brackett. Hurry up and finish that.
It's a good book. You're going to love it.
Isabel Cushy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Nathan Cosby, Cheryl Winters, Tracy Bodine, Devin Lee, Drew Angry Fiesta Rodan Barnardi. I have got to get the story on that one. Chris Winder and J.R. Handley.
He's never going to tell you.
Thank you, patrons. Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
patrons.
And with that, we are going to get out of here because, well, I have stuff to do. I'm still playing catch up.
Misty says goodbye.
And Misty wants to, hide in his beard. So with that, we are out of here.